I wonder if they remember what a word balloon is. Hello, curiously creative comic strip artists. Today I want to talk to you about the next 3 steps of your comic strip creation. The first step is drawing. Drawing is also called illustration, and it means when you draw your characters, your objects, and your word balloons in your comic strip. You remember what word balloons are, right? I'll give you a hint. The second part is lettering. Lettering is where you add the words inside your word balloons. We'll be adding the words in our word balloons during the drawing section of this lesson. The third step of your comic strip creation that I want to talk to you about today is inking. Inking is when you add black permanent lines over your pencil lines so that they cannot be erased. So by the end of this lesson, you'll know how to draw, letter, and ink your comic strip. Let's get started. Today will be divided into 3 parts. One will be creating sketches for your comic strip, as many as it takes, until you get a final sketch. From there, you will draw with pencil your comic strip by looking at your final sketch. And after that, we will apply marker or ink to it to give it thick, black, permanent lines so it's not erasable. And I'm going to show you all of those steps. I'm going to walk you through it. At first, before we get started though, I want to show you some of the supplies that we have. So we have our sheet, which is at the end of the PDF, and you can print out as many as you need to. And I will show you the sketches in a second, but I want to show you the supplies first. So you can use a pencil. This is a regular pencil. Okay, if you have a pencil at home, that's what I'll be using today. A ruler. This one's a metal one, but that is to get the nice straight lines, and you'll see me using that here in a moment. Here's another type of eraser. It's a kneaded eraser, and you can press it, you can bend it, you can mold it. It's kind of like silly putty. It kind of feels like silly putty. If you happen to have this, great. But if not, you can always use the eraser at the top of your pencil. So either way. But we'll be doing that before we get to the ink part. Here are some options for the ink, which creates those nice, thick, permanent black lines. So here's a regular Pilot pen, and you can see the tip there. Okay. If you have a fine Sharpie marker, you can use that, and you can see the tip there. It's a little bit blurry, but it's a very fine tip. And if you have these are the pens that comic book and comic strip illustrators use. They're called Pitt pens. And it has a very similar tip to a Sharpie marker, a fine Sharpie marker. And I'll demonstrate the different widths of those lines in a moment. So these are our supplies: the sheet, the ruler, the pencil, any type of eraser, and then the pens for the thick black lines. So let's talk about the sketch, which is the first part of today's assignment. At the end of the PDF, you can print out as many of these as you need. I ended up having to do it twice. So you'll be doing the sketches, and before you do the sketches, you can put your name and the name of your comic strip. Mine is called Will You Grow Up? And then sketch out your comic strip in the 4 panels. As you can see here, I didn't fit the words right. I scribbled out some words. I wanted to change the words. I scribbled out a bird in the background that I didn't want there, and some of the words overlapped here. So then on my second sketch, it got better. And you can see that the words fit in the panel now, and the words are all there, and nothing's scribbled out, and everything is a little bit more detailed. So I'm gonna use this sketch. This is my final sketch. I'm gonna use this sketch as I create my comic right here, my comic strip. And we'll get started with that first. And after this, I will show you what we're going to do to create the the thick black permanent lines, or what comic strip illustrators call inking it up. So let's begin. So I've finished drawing my comic strip with pencil, and now I want to create those thick black permanent lines like we talked about. And I'm going to be using this Sharpie fine marker, but you can use any of the options that we talked about earlier. You can use another black pen or a Pitt pen if you have one, but I'll be using the Sharpie marker for myself. But before I get started with that, what we're going to have to do is all of the parts that we have drawn in with pencil, we're going to erase. And you want to erase lightly so that you can still see it. Oh, and try not to do what I just did, crinkled up the paper. You want to erase to where you can still kind of see it. See how I'm erasing, but you can still see the image? You want to hold you're going to want to hold one side of your sheet, your paper, with your hand pretty strongly, and then erase in the other direction, okay? So that's what I'm doing here. And you can take your time with this. This will probably take a while, especially if you're using this type of eraser. You may need actually a couple pencils with that eraser, but that's okay. Take your time, and we're just erasing it so we're trying to get the pencil marks off of the paper because we're going to cover them in ink, okay? And by doing this, we make sure that it doesn't smudge, that the pencil doesn't smudge across the paper, okay? Because the ink will be permanent, and the ink from the pen or the marker that you use will not smudge. It'll be permanent and it will stay on the paper. Whereas pencil usually smudges it can smear if you go like this with it. So that's why we're erasing this. Okay, and most of it is erased, but I can still see the image. See that? So I can still see the words, I can still see the drawings that I made. So that's the first part. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pen to outline, basically redraw over all of these lines, all these little lines for the drawings, and then the words. Before I do that, I want to show you the difference between these different pen options and the line thicknesses of them. So here's that Pilot gel pen. I'm just going to draw a bunch of lines so you can see how it compares to the other pens. This is a Sharpie fine tip. Similar line thickness. See how that's pretty similar? And then here's a Pitt pen, the one used by artists, comic book and comic strip artists. See how all of these different line thicknesses and darkness are very similar? So it's okay to use, if you just have a black pen at home, that's okay. You can just use a black pen. I prefer this Sharpie fine tip marker. There's that fine tip again. And that's what I'm going to be using. So as you can see, all three pens create a similar line thickness and line darkness. So whatever pen you would prefer, whatever pen you have at home will be great to use. So I'm going to get started here, and I'm going to outline all of these drawings and these words with my pen. So this is the goal of where you will be at the end of today's assignment, where your pencil is covered up with permanent ink In my case, I used a Sharpie fine marker, as I mentioned before, but you can use a black ink pen. You can see that I still have to erase a little bit, some sections, but this is your goal for today's assignment. So have fun and let's be productive. So now your comic strip is drawn, lettered, and inked. Great job! In the next lesson, I will show you how to add color to your comic strip. So until then, keep being creative.